Hello, welcome to the third and last of the series of Theosophical Oratory, to transferring knowledge in a clear manner. So, one of the main strategies that is used for this is called the VICs of communication, which are techniques to achieve transference of information. So, VICs stands for visualize, internalize, customize, and simplify. Once we have gathered the information using the techniques that we shared in the last video, in the second part, we are ready to begin the speech. But before beginning the speech, there are some tips that we can have in mind in order to make it easily understandable by those who are listening to us. So the first one is the visualize. And visualize has a lot to do with the use of the power of thought. We are aware as Theosophists that our thought has enormous power. And using it to create mental images that help us convey our message is a very powerful and useful tool. When we speak, we must imagine that we are seeing what we are talking about over the heads of our listeners. That is a very powerful tool. So we connect with the audience using all the body tips that we have seen in the first part, but also we imagine how all the ideas are floating around in front of us, near the shoulders of our listeners. This will give us not only the sense of projection, but also it will create a mental image that will and somehow affect the audience. And here, I would like to share some kind of visualization that I personally do. It is done a little before of the starting of the talk, the day before, or some minutes before, or the morning before. You can just visualize the auditorium where you are going to talk. Or if you are doing it online, you can just visualize the screen and the images of the people that will be present. Or if it is an auditorium, the chairs, and you just visualize the space, on the space, and feel that you are enclosing the space and just feeding it with harmony, light, common understanding, peace, flowing of ideas. Then when you arrive to the auditorium, you also feel that you are the one enclosing the many. So in that moment, you feel really that unity, because all of the people that are present, whether in the auditorium or through the Zoom or through any other tool of virtual communication, actually are there with a common objective, that is, whether presenting or listening to a topic that has been suggested. This is the art of including with the gaze, making brief eye contact with everyone. And here is when this art comes of great help to make this come into the physical real. We have done it with our power of thought, but here now we are connecting to each one of the presents. Of course, in a virtual mode, it's more difficult to do so, but in the physical meeting, it's possible to just, for a moment, just connect visually with all the audience. While we do that, we can identify with the image of what we contemplate and enter into it, being able to have an internal image of the topic. The great function of the speaker is to see for his audience and to convey in words what he or she is able to remember. So here we see how important also the previous steps that we saw in the second video are, because we will have this kind of complete vision of our subject in a way that we will be able to convey to our audience. Internalize. As lecturers, we must know the subject in depth and be able to relate it to our own experience. This is very related to the internalization of what was studied and compiled in the previous steps in the second video, where we have made notes for preparation and we have tried to simplify them, distill them, squeeze them, and throw them away, and then put them together, and all this process that we described. And this throw them away is also a literal throw away in the sense that it is not advised to memorize what we are going to say because it kills creativity and spontaneity. So we have to reach at a point that we know so well the subject that we are capable of talking about it without the need of repeating by memory the things. Of course, we always can have a support like a PowerPoint or a text. The ideal is not to read, of course, but the important thing is that we do not repeat by heart, but that we allow our mind and our inner being, that Buddhic nature in us, to feel also the need of the audience. We have connected with the audience in a special way at the beginning. So in that way, there is an energetic exchange between the speaker and the audience. And as the speaker develops the topic, some new ideas, new ways regarding the subject will come. We should allow that spontaneity and that creativity come to us during the speech. So let's try to avoid memorization. Let's try to master the subject in a way that we are capable of talking naturally about it. But for that, what we saw in the second part is very, very important. And also knowing all these tips from the first video about the posture can be also very helpful, because when we breathe and when we know how to manage our physical body, we are also allowing the spontaneity and the ideas to come. As we saw, breathing calms our nervous system highly. So if we know how to breathe and we apply this in our talks and we practice these breathing exercises on a daily basis, this will for sure help us to remember better what we are going to say, what we have prepared, and also to give some room to the spontaneity and creativity that will come at some point during our talk. Customize is the third element of these techniques to convey the information. And it means to characterize the interlocutor or the audience in order to be able to speak to their minds and hearts. So let us remember that it is not about the speaker, it is about the audience. We are just there to communicate something more important than our own personality. So our presentation should be both accessible to novices and edifying to veterans. We will always face different kind of crowds and we will have mixed kind of knowledges. There will be some people that don't know anything about theosophy, others will know more. But if we have to take a decision, let us prefer the novices, because those who know already or have a baggage of theosophy, they will for sure adapt. But those who are going for the first time or that don't have a very deep knowledge, they are those who need the most to hear in a very clear language, accessible language, the kind of information that we are sharing. So we can think about this prior knowledge and try to adapt it to an accessible language and way of conveying. And the presentation must be constructed with the receiver in mind rather than the sender. As I was saying, it's not about us, it's about who is listening to us. Ideally, we should have a structure clear in our minds to divide a lecture. That will make the audience to be able to have a clear perspective of what we are going to say. So we should think of an introduction, proposition, that is the main idea, an introduction that familiarizes them with the subject, discussion, and a conclusion. So in the introduction, we aim to integrate the audience. And how to integrate the audience? One option is finding something common to all human beings, whether it's something related to the need of the moment, as we were discussing in the second video, or something related to their daily life, a common question, etc. Anything that really can make people relate to what you are saying and that make them see that it is of some use for their own lives. And after that, take people from idea to idea. Like give a general introduction, but then slowly from one idea to the other to the proposition to say exactly what we are going to talk about in a direct and simple way. That means that we are establishing a clear starting point for our speech. Then, once we do that, we begin with the bigger part of our speech that will be the discussion. Is the body of the speech, is the central part where all the ideas are developed. And finally, as a last part, a conclusion, we should be able to summarize what has been said connected to the initial proposition and something that we call hit the target, to let them with something that they can reflect upon or try to apply in their lives, something that led us to awaken the soul. We have to put some seed thought on the audience. Now let's come to the last, simplify. We simplify by using strategies to make information accessible and easily understandable to the audience. So the ideal of any theosophical speech is to present theosophy in its simplest and most vivid terms. In terms of the surrounding, of the life, the relationship of people, the nature, and so on. A little bit what we were discussing of connect with what is common to everyone. And for that, during our speech, we should use examples, analogies, metaphors, anecdotes, simple and clear language, appropriate structure, visual support. All these tools are tools that will help to convey the message and to transfer the knowledge through our spoken speech to the audience. First of all, it's important to tell that not always it is necessary to use a presentation. We also have to have some discernment on this, because not all subjects need a presentation. So first, let's reflect upon this. If we really need a presentation, then we use it, and we use it to transfer knowledge so that the brain of the interlocutor, of the audience, captures the information in a better and simpler way, in a more effective way. And one important thing to have into consideration is that the order of the presentation should coincide with the discursive structure. There are also some kind of informations that can be translated into numbers or figures using graphs and other and other information that will be complemented by only image. So for instance, if we want to convey about some historical thing, we should use maybe a timeline, or if we are giving a very specific information in numbers or statistics or things like that, we could think about a pie chart or a comparative chart. That will depend on the kind of information. And nowadays, there are a lot of tools that can help us putting that into images. Depending on the information, we could use certain visual help that will make us be more effective in the transmission of the message. For instance, if we are quoting, it can be useful to have the quote there so people can follow. Or if there is some specific phrase that we want to make emphasis on, we can just highlight it, etc., etc., etc. So as we were saying, some information should be translated into numbers or figures using graphs, images, or other visual resources. Remember, they collaborate in the understanding of the information. They do not replace the information. They are supporters of what we are trying to convey and say. And there are many effective tools nowadays in what concerns to the kind of designs that we are using. So if we are not very good at PowerPoints or at designing, etc., we can always get some inspiration from tools in internet. So review some beautiful presentations of some people and color palettes, kind of fonts, structures, organization of the information in the PowerPoint. I mean, we are not alone in that process of creating presentations, and I'm not going to share anything specific related to that because that will be a complete new subject on how to make PowerPoint presentations. And nowadays there are other tools like Canva and many others that can be used. So that is not the aim of this, just general main points. The titles shouldn't be so long. There should be a strong color contrast and use of friendly colors, especially if we want to project or we are sharing on a screen. And the best kind of fonts to be used are those called sans serif with a minimum of 18 points preferably, so people can read comfortably. And of course, the aesthetics of the presentation must be in accordance with the message to be transmitted. If you are talking about science, you cannot project an image that communicates fashion or lifestyle. Or if you are talking about the seven planes, I mean, you should find visual possibilities that convey the message the best. I guess this is also a very intuitive part of the work. And as I guess happens with all the points that we have been discussing during these videos, everything requires a lot of practice, a lot of training. And as we keep practicing, keep doing the work, we will ourselves unfold all those intuitions that are inside us that will help us deciding what is the best information to put, what is the best thing to add in order to make our message understandable. Let's come to final part of this presentation on how to answer challenging questions. One of the main fears of the speaker is to face the question and answer session, especially when some of the questions can be challenging in the sense that they are put in a way that can be a little intimidating. So the first thing is, since we have prepared a lot our lecture, we have reflected upon the subject and we have made a good inner research and outer research, we should try to be spontaneous, relax. In here, we can use also a lot all these tips that we have given about breathing, the posture, etc. Because the posture, the breathing, the way we look at our audience will create some kind of empathy also. Also, some tip that is very useful is that previously to our lecture, we also have ready a document of possible questions and answers because maybe some of them will come. But even if they don't come, the fact of having it gives a psychological peace to us. So it's a good thing to have it prepared. Also, when we are facing questions, especially those that are challenging for us, there is something important is to try to reduce the negative emotion of the questionnaire by using opening phrases that will help to generate greater receptivity in them. So instead of a reaction of fear or immediately trying to contradict or something that can come as a reaction in general, we can just use expressions that, oh yes, in fact, or actually what I wanted to mean by that, or your question allows me to clarify that something. Or that question I also asked myself and I came to the conclusion of, in this case, it's very useful to have that document of possible questions and answers ready. Or the aspect to highlight in this question that you are asking is that, or I understand that your interest in this is that, or that what you are saying makes me think that, or even if you don't know the question and the answer to the question, you can say something like, your question is very good. Let me investigate about that. Because it is okay not to know all the questions. But it is important to keep a congruent nonverbal message and do not let emotions that may be perceived as negative filter. The speaker doesn't not necessarily need to know everything, and it is not wrong to recognize it. And every question, actually, and ultimately, should be assumed as the possibility of creating greater clarity and progress. And even if you don't know how to answer the question, take that question for your future contemplation. It's an opportunity of growing, of learning for you as a lecturer and for the audience. And maybe also, who knows, someone in the audience can even contribute. So you can also, especially in a theosophical realm, call the audience to participate and contribute with this aspect of the questions and answers. It is important to achieve congruence between what is said, the message, and how it is said, the voice and the visual elements, in order to generate trust and better convey our message. We do not go out to the auditorium with the purpose of teaching, but of sharing something that is worth to, that is theosophy. And mastering the art of public speaking means articulating thought processes with a good dose of work and practice. And these work and practice, as we have seen, are fundamental, not only as students of theosophy, but as theosophical speakers. And some tips and suggestions. In order to become a better speaker, you should watch famous speakers to learn from them. Improvisation. You can do yourself or in a small group of friends, even create a group of oratory. Actually, this is an experience that I shared from my own lodge in Colombia. We had for around 2-3 years a group of theosophical oratory where we used to train ourselves in the art of oratory. And one of the exercises that we used to do was improvisation. So a personal topic or any topic was given and we should improvise on that. We used to make a lot of different kind of exercises, but improvisation came to be very, very useful tool to train. And also do a reading aloud of the lecture in a conversational tone. And if you have the time, you can record yourself while you are reading it and even listen to yourself in order to track the possible ways and opportunities to improve. And finally, let us think always of a conference or a lecture as an opportunity to learn, to deeper in our inner research, to share with our fellow theosophists. And let's keep always in mind the responsibilities of the speaker, such as accepting the karma of the one who teaches, be faithful to the truth, do not use theosophical conference to make money, do not try to speak, meaning do not try to get invitation to speak, but if you are invited, do not refuse, because it's kind of a duty and an opportunity, as we have seen. Not to repeat a lecture, but renew it. So whenever you are asked to give a lecture on a subject that you have already presented, try to always renew it. And something that I didn't mention is whenever you finish a lecture, in that notebook that you carry with you to keep noting all your ideas and thoughts, you can also, after each lecture, note down your impressions on that. And next time that you give a lecture, or any lecture on the same topic, you can take those notes also as a seed thought to improve or to go to a different kind of lecture. Don't cancel or postpone. Do not change the subject of a lecture at the last minute. Stay out of leadership positions. When you are a theosophical lecturer, this is a suggestion that in most of the oratory theosophical books that I have read, they suggest. Do not make fun of anyone's questions and pray beforehand. Whether pray, whether meditate, offer that lecture to the higher source. So well, here we finish the 3 series course of Theosophical Oratory of the Leadership Program of the World Federation of Young Theosophists. And just remember, these are just suggestions, ideas, materials that I have compiled, but there is always a room for improvement, for self-research, and each one of us should find the ways that fit us better in order to become better theosophists, better human beings and speakers. Thank you very much. Namaste.